Well, good afternoon there, my friends, and welcome back. If you're a regular viewer, and welcome to the channel if you're a new viewer. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about this and a little bit about that. As usual, kind of off the top of my head, when I have an opportunity and I'll sit down to make a video, but it's usually a topic that I'm thinking about at the moment. And today it's about that voice in our heads. What is that voice in our heads? Not that we hear or listen to, but that we actually respond to. It's not something I really gave much thought to throughout my life until recent years, when I encountered a lot more, discussions within different belief systems, especially Buddhism, about mindfulness and awareness. And it's always something that I'd had in the back of my mind, no pun intended. But I just figured a certain amount of mental chatter is normal, which in many instances it is. If there's something that is bugging us, if there's something that we need to get done, we'll talk to ourselves. But the interesting thing is that we don't ask ourselves where that voice comes from. We just assume, well, it's just us talking to ourselves. Yeah, but through what means are you listening to yourself? And the more you think about it, you realize there's a speaker and a listener. And the listener will even respond to the speaker. Simple thought might be driving down the freeway and you're like, I'm going to take the back roads today. And then you're like, oh, hell no, I'm not going that way. I'll end up being twice as long. And boom, decision's made and you keep going the same way. You had an idea to go a different way. You talked yourself out of it. I won't even get into the intuition aspect and how correct it is most of the time, because that's another topic altogether. I'd like to do an entire, series about intuition and following our instincts, but much more research is needed into that. In the way that animals don't think about yesterday or tomorrow, they're thinking about right now. We as humans can also choose to live that way. But it's not as simple as Ram Dass would say, be here now, right? I mean, I've heard this when I was younger, just the idea of living in the present, in the moment. Some people have taken it to such floaty, flighty levels as that nothing matters except for what you're doing right now, and don't ever think about the past or the future. I think that's a little bit excessive. I think we need to plan for our tomorrow to an extent. The same way you should think about your past in order to remember those that we've lost, or to reminisce about good times, or to even remember we did something wrong so we don't do it again, learning from our past. The difference is dwelling versus having a passing thought or idea. The more we let those thoughts pass through our minds and don't hang on to them, the more that little voice will start to quiet inside. And the reason I'm talking about this now is because I actually noticed over the past several months, I'd say, namely, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when it started, but I've been practicing trying to be self-aware for a very long time, every moment. And I think I mentioned this in a previous video if I uploaded it, I don't recall. But that paying attention to what's going on in your own mind is much more difficult than it seems. It's like focusing on your breath or focusing on your thoughts and being aware and just letting them pass through. The more we do this, the more we, I guess, cease to have those inner voices telling us things that, whether it's something we need to hear or not, they can be even invasive thoughts. Or a great example, which would be another topic altogether, but believing that something you're thinking is bad and therefore dwelling on it and thinking you're a bad person. Look, we have all kinds of thoughts. Excuse me. Thoughts and ideas about life. And everything is okay. Everything to think about in passing is okay. The more we try to resist, the more reality will insist. How about that? Hey, I made it rhyme. There's so much to learn from others' experiences, but from our own, it's hard to garner enough support from ourselves to back ourselves up. And what I mean by that is those inner voices are usually critical. And sometimes it's something mundane, like just talking to yourself or thinking about something, but Sometimes they're self-defeating voices, such as you would call it they call it in psychology the imposter syndrome. But there's many other words and terms for it. It's a form of insecurity, a form of self-doubt and self-criticism, which most people I've heard from and talked to in life. I guess this has become more common on YouTube and in the age of the internet because people are more willing to open up. You didn't go hang out with a group of friends and have one of your buddies just say, "Yeah, man, I'm having a lot of self-defeating thoughts," and as a teenager, and be like, "Yeah, I really feel shitty about myself and I don't like who I am." Because some, will open up. These days, kids are a lot more open, but, even in my generation, it was like you just played the tough guy and, you scrape your knee, you get up and you keep skating. The same way, if you scrape your brain, you just knock yourself in the head and keep moving on. Had some anxiety, depression episodes, all different types of mental issues throughout my life. A mild Tourette's and tics, which I had to get under control, negative thoughts, and these feelings of impending doom, which I did make a video about several years ago, and it has, I'll notice because I'll get comments on certain videos that are very old that have a lot of views, and it's the ones in the mental health series are usually the most, watched. Since I don't make videos to, according to what people want or what's in demand, I'm not going to jump in and start talking about mental health and stoicism all of a sudden just because it's popular, because it's about what's on my mind. But when what's on my mind coincides with what's going on with people, it really resonates with certain folks, and that's a good thing. I mean, when somebody tells me they heard just the right message at just the right time and that it helped them out, that just keeps me going. I can make 10 more videos off of that one comment, because it's somebody being honest. And it's not like, I'm making people feel better, but it makes me feel like, I feel like part of my path is to try to inspire others. And I've had a hard time reconciling that with just being insecure about my own views on things. I see folks out there who are very sure about themselves, whether they talk about politics, religion, scientific discoveries or specialized, topics, which no mortal man can know all of it. So you're kind of trusting this expert to give you advice. And like everyone else out there, I listened to many different people and many different ideas, and found a lot of them are just completely delusional, right? Or full of it. And we have to sort through that to figure out, who's telling us the truth. But you'll find these certain repeating ideas and archetypes within all different belief systems. One of those always has been mindfulness. In every religion, in every spiritual teaching, mindfulness is like a central theme. So if you consider, even say in Christianity, prayer is their form of mindfulness, or going to church. In certain, Eastern mysticism, it can be, meditation, or taking a pilgrimage, traveling. What you're doing is you're putting in a focus on something that is higher than you, that is there to fulfill you, but without expecting anything in return. And this is difficult for people. We feel like we're owed something in this life. And I say we, not everyone does. I definitely, there was a point in my life where I thought, hey, I'm doing the best I can. How do I get ahead? This isn't fair. But realized I'm exactly where I need to be at this moment. It seems like everything is falling into place. And I don't mean just like working out perfectly for me in life. I just mean that all of the things that used to bother me or that I used to worry about, I've learned to manage and learn to maintain. And I want other people to be able to have that as well. And so I'm trying to figure out a method to do so. I'm not going to write a 12-step program or a book on how to be mindful or how to be happy, because it's pointless. It's as simple as laying out one sentence: focus on the now, and then continue to do so as much as possible. Like any muscle, memory of being aware of the moment is something that you have to develop over time. And I find myself doing it more and more and more. In fact, I feel like, 80% of the time when I'm doing something, I'm focused on it. I'm thinking, it's like not looking at what you're doing, it's looking outside at you at what you're doing. And that sounds kind of weird, but that looking in on yourself, I believe, is observing from the same place that voice comes from. I guess Jung would call it the unconscious or the collective unconscious. But some may call it Akasha, or the Akashic records, being kind of the record of the universe, if you will, in our lives and history. And this really comes down to personal beliefs and what a person, believes is true. And I can't leave out God from this, because when you talk about inner voices and guidance and following your intuition, religion definitely comes into it, whether it be, the Abrahamic religions or something more modern, if you will. I don't like the term New Age, because New Age just is something old age repackaged. The same ideas, considering a person has to have certain beliefs to be a member of a certain group. I would like to step outside that for a moment and mention the exception to the rule, which is Gnosticism. And that word comes up a lot, and I've heard it a lot through history. And somebody mentioned it at work the other day. I was talking about the Council of Nicaea, and my coworker, my boss, I guess, he said he's really into history, so we started talking about, Nag Hammadi and the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I was mentioning, how they were found and what a revelation they were, and how they were broke up to 7 different people to do different, decipherings, and how controversial it all was. And then we talked about a couple hundred years after Jesus, the Council of Nicaea decided which books would go in the Bible, putting Genesis in there and then removing the book of Enoch. And, the rest is history. The point being that there's dogma within belief systems. But Gnosticism is nothing like that. Gnosticism is similar to, it's almost, I heard someone say that the modern form of Gnosticism would be Freemasonry. And I guess I could see that to an extent. My thought on it is that any system that doesn't have a system is hard for people to really understand if there's no real practices. So Freemasons, you can be a Buddhist, you can be a Christian, you can be Islamic, you can be a Jew. The only condition is you have to believe in a higher power. You can call it God or call it whatever you want. The all. It doesn't matter. In Gnosticism, it was very similar. You could label God whatever you wanted, but it wasn't about the label. It was about the experience. Gnosis is different than believing. It was like when Carl Jung was asked, "Do you believe in God?" And he said, "I don't believe. I know." And Gnosis is when you've had a personal direct experience that leaves no doubt in your mind that there's a higher guidance and a higher purpose to life, and that you're not just flesh and bone flying through space randomly by chance. Now, I'll tell you, that experience never came to me until over the last year. I still had some doubts. I was doing these kind of like couple hour, intentional like meditations with different music, and even listening to different lectures and stuff, and trying different experiments to try to get my brain in alignment with something greater. And the messages that I got about life was just keep working, do your thing. But it was such a direct experience that I can't doubt it. I can't doubt that that I have a mission to fulfill in this life, but I don't need to label it and pretend like it's better than anyone else's, because it's not. I'm here to do what I do, just like you're here to do what you do. And that voice in the back of our head is often telling us that we're off the path. And when we start to see a lot of synchronicities, coincidences, if you will, and a lot of repeating what seem like patterns to us, it's easy to negate it. It's happened to me in the past, like probably 7 years ago or something, when I was doing a lot of practices like meditation. And I wasn't aware of the connection with that and synchronicities. And I was just having all these crazy, a feeling of awesomeness. And I was practicing like Kundalini yoga just for a brief while, but then I just quit and lost my path. And when I joined back up with it, I realized, oh shit, why did I leave? You know, this is how I should be feeling all the time. Doesn't mean that I feel like 100% all the time. No, I get tired. I watch Netflix. I'm lazy sometimes. But it's crucial to remember that's that part of my brain telling me that it's lazy. That's the part of my brain, that inner voice saying, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. But my heart tells me, no. When the time comes, I'll do this or I'll do that. And when you stop worrying about what might be, what might happen, or what could have happened, everything just starts to make sense. And it compounds, it snowballs into every moment being a chance for something new. And I'd say my advice would be first to take every challenge with look at it as something awesome and exciting. To give you an extreme example, one of the channels I watch, it's this old guy, and he has a podcast. It's called Think to Sleep or something like that, or I can't remember, but it's really good. He has a soft voice and he's very, he's a wise old man. But on his YouTube channel, he was talking about this, just kind of, the self-awareness factor, and how he went to get a colonoscopy and how everybody had always told him that it's a scary thing. And when he got there, he was talking. So he went there intending to say, no, I'm not going to make it a scary thing. And he talked to the doctor. They said, yeah, most people get the sedation. And he had the IV in and ready. And he said, no, I don't want to be sedated. So instead, he laid on his side and he watched the screen. And they talked the whole time and joked around about the polyps or whatever. It's a gross thing that most people don't want to talk about. But for him, he was like, I made this a good experience. I took one of the things that people think is the most scary or horrible thing that they can do, and just made it about learning and seeing the inside of my body from a different angle. I thought that was pretty awesome. Definitely worth celebrating. And that's shutting up that fearful voice in the back of your mind. In other words, looking at every situation new and fresh is one of the hardest things to do. Everything is an opportunity. Every crisis is an opportunity for change and learning. So those are my thoughts for the day. I'm going to leave it there. It's probably been long enough. I tend to go on longer and longer, and it's not always a good thing. I get the thoughts out I need to. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Appreciate your time. I hope you gained something from it. Leave a comment or a like or any of those things, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace and be well.